Thanks for that introduction, Cindy. That was really great. And it's a delight to be here. And I really must thank the organisers, because it's one of my pleasures. You know, I come to ARA and have been doing since about 1990, but it's actually the pleasure of the company, of the ICTR groups, with the passion for teaching, which has meant most to me. So it is a delight once again to be here and to develop ideas that I last put forward here about 3 years ago in the Keynote then. I'm also really fascinated by that introduction, because I hope you feel the energy, if you like, that you were talking about, Cindy, from the 60s, that I still recall, and I hope you feel expressed through my body the love for education and the passion that I still retain, which actually emerged in the first time I taught in the East End of London in 1967. So you're right, it does come from those times. And what I'm also hoping is you do feel, yes, the joy of education, the discipline of rigorous educational inquiry, and also the knowledge that we as teacher researchers generate and we can actually share globally through what we're doing actually locally. I'm hoping that you also can respond to something I want to try for the first time later on. And I haven't done this before, because I've often told, if you like, smooth stories of self. You know, the idea that the teacher researcher can actually give an account where you're explaining your learning, and it does come over without too many difficulties and painful experiences, and quite a few of the difficulties that I think everybody in this room will actually recognise. And so what I want to try and do later on this evening is to just share some of those difficulties, but in a way that doesn't actually destroy, by bringing the kind of anger and the rage that I felt at times into the room. I hope I can show you how I've actually channeled that energy in a much more creative way than the kind of destructive emotions which I sometimes felt when I'd been actually opposed, you know, in terms of what I really believed in, or I've suffered pressures that actually could have constrained my academic freedom. But I want to bring those in a way that I hope you feel I'm still channeling the creative energy and the love for what I do in the accounts I give. And I'm also hoping that you'll feel that it's really important to combine our voices. So if I stand here for 50 minutes and I talk at you, there's going to be no combination of our voices. So I just like you to hold on to that I personally would welcome your interjections. If you're feeling that you would actually like to respond, this for me would be the most important part of this keynote. If you're feeling that combining our voices is possible, given that the forum that we've got isn't exactly conducive to the kind of educational space that I would imagine most of you are used to when you're in an educational relationship. But it is actually great to see you, even though you're tiered right back to the back. What I also want to just show you is this, that I prepared the keynote, and I've just put it on the web at the site that I use called actionresearch.net. If you do a Google search on actionresearch.net, it'll come up with this site. You needn't take the URL at the top there. That gets you into it, but actionresearch.net is the easier one to remember. What I've done is actually put the keynote with all the URLs for the video clips and also the text. So you can actually, that is now live from the internet, and you can just go down it, access the video clips that I'm going to just show you, the details of the diagrams that I give you, and also the text and the references. So that is there, and as I say, you can actually access it as easily as that. Now, what I want to just start with is something I'm hoping that you'll actually recognise, and these are just two clips to start with, and then I want to show you a third clip. And I just want to see, in terms of what Cindy was saying about the energy that is expressed in educational relationships, which I feel is missing from almost every academic text that I've ever read on education. Yeah? I'd like to show you what I think is missing, to see if it resonates with what you're experiencing literally every day in your practice. And as I go on with this idea of combining voices in living theories from teacher research, I hope you'll see that I'm advocating that we really bring into the public domain the kind of knowledge embodied in our practice. So what I just want to do is just show you at least two brief clips The first one is from China, and some of you may have seen this before. I'll just explain the context. Some 80-odd students in this class. It's a class on English teaching. This is a teacher. She got a PhD with me in 1996. She went over for 6 years in China. She was made a friend of China because of her contribution to teacher research there. And I was videotaping her in the year 2000, and I'd switched the camera off, and I thought the lesson was ended. And then I saw Moira just walk over to the door, and I turned the camera back on. And this is what I saw. And what I want to do is to move it along very quickly in terms of the cursor. Because as well as the energy that never seems to get into academic texts about education, I also believe that we all live in a relationally dynamic way. Now, as I look at you all passively sitting there, it's difficult to believe. But I'm convinced that in every one of your classrooms, you're moving all the time, you're connecting with students, and it's rather like this. And I want to make these 2 points about the energy that we feel in loving what we do, but also this idea of a relationally dynamic representation of our practice, which again is missing from every academic text that I've read in education. So if I do this with a QuickTime facility, just watch. This student had resisted something Moira wanted to do, and a Chinese student, it's very unusual for them to resist what a teacher requests. And at the end of this lesson, Moira is congratulating her on this resistance, because that is what Moira is wanting to do with this sense of emancipation. Now, as I move this backwards and forwards, that idea of a relational dynamic, which I think that every one of you will recognize, is part of your daily practice with your students. Now, the gaze, which I'm there, that Moira really does love what she does. I mean, there's no question of it. And the feeling that I got as I saw this is that it shows these 2 qualities. One, a person with the energy and the expression of that with her students, and this idea of the relational dynamic. Now, the second clip just shows the relationship between one teacher and the pupil, the student. And I just want you to focus as it moves. The student comes and just brushes some chalk off the back of the jacket. Okay, now the teacher is clearly feeling very easy and trusting. There's very, very little twitching in England. If anybody touched anybody, I tell you, there'd be a real shock and freeze on around the room, you know. But here, the touch is accepted. There's a move round, and what I just want to watch is that. That was it was a fraction of a second. Now watch it. Okay? There, and then on. Now, what I'm saying is, and if you look at behind Cheryl, you'll see the movement, the relational dynamic in the room, which everybody here, I think, will recognize this idea that we're all in this space and this boundary, and it's part of our normal practice. But what I'm just curious about is whether I've made those 2 points about the flow of the energy through the body, that gaze, which is, it connects so powerfully with the individual, so that if you are subjected to that kind of gaze, you will feel recognized. And it is also relationally dynamic. You can feel the movement and the dynamism in the interactions, which, as I say, we never see in representations of educational research. So I hope that that is actually clear in terms of what I'm actually focusing on. And then, what I want just to do is to show you this clip. It lasts about 3 minutes. It's part way through. The context is that the students have, and these are 6-year-olds, have been given what is called the task wheel. It's an action research cycle. You know the action research where you say, well look, there's something I really value, but I'm not living this as fully as I can. I imagine what to do, I act, I evaluate, and I modify. And this action reflection cycle, which was called the task wheel, which stands for thinking actively in a social context, was developed by Bell Wallace in over 19 years of working in KwaZulu-Natal. And it's, what do I know about this? What's the task? How many ideas can I think of? Which is the best idea? Let's do it. How well did I do? Let's tell someone. What have I learned? Now, 6-year-olds are using this, as well as my doctoral students, as well as the master's students. So that's the kind of task wheel that these 6-year-olds have been given. And the surprising thing from this video clip that has attracted many teachers to seeing that when the 6-year-olds were asked about this task wheel, they actually redesigned it. And they said that it wasn't adequate for their own learning. And they invited the president of the National Association for Gifted and Talented Children down to their school. And the president came down, Bell Wallace went to that school, and she agreed that they'd redesigned her model in a more appropriate way than she'd actually presented it. Now, I'll just show you 3 minutes of this, because in relation to combining voices, I think this is really important, because Joy Mounter, who was the teacher, told her 6-year-olds that she was doing a master's degree at the university and that she was studying learners and learning. And these 6-year-olds, she said, got really outraged with her. They were very irritated and asked how could she possibly do this when they weren't there as learners. Right? Now, she agreed with them, and she included, and I'll show you how you can access her account of how the pupils, these 6-year-olds' voices, were not just there as illustrative, they participated in a creative process of generating their own theory of learning. So, as I said, this is about 3 minutes, it's halfway into the clip, and I'll show you where you can access them on the web. It's part of Joy's master's account.
But if somebody didn't know like the learning masters, if somebody hadn't seen them before, they could look at this and it's like, this is the music.
So do you think the learning skills that you use, the rainbow and the task wheel, do they fit together?
I think not. This is because this is like the questions and that's like the pictures of because learning skills, they're just like things like curiosities and cat. Well, this actually gets you because it gives you questions of what you can do to sort the problem out. While the learning skills, you just use them. With the task wheel.
Do you think you use the skills to help you with thinking the task wheel?
You'll have to.
Do you think the task wheel is perfect, or do you think it could be different?
It could make it a little bit better, but I'll give it a lot of reason.
How would you change it then, do you think?
I think it's I'll just think.
I know you've got some paper there, so we've been thinking about it, and you've got some drawings.
So I think it might be it allows to take down, and then it's 3D.
So you think it would be better to be more 3D?
Yes.
Right, so you think it's better to be 3D. How else do you think you would change
I think if we had steps down it, your thinking would go down because it can't go up. Hopefully your thinking has to go down. So let's say that would be like just 3D, then you've got the whole going and your learning will grow. Yeah, once you've got to there, it goes all the way around.
Let me just check I understand what you mean. So you mean, Perry, that the outside layer of the wheel would come underneath, into the middle, and back up.
And then you see so there's a whole layer and it moves up just there.
So with this, I thought that perhaps you're thinking that
I've got this 20 odd minutes of the video, and I've broken it down so that I can put it on the stream server. I did that for Joy, and you can access that from her account on the web. But I'm hoping that you can see that by including the 6-year-old's voices in her account to show that they're actually participating, not just illustrative examples, but this is an educational relationship where the creativity of the students is actually being expressed and joining with the teacher's voice in terms of the account. Are you okay with that? I mean, do, as I say, if you feel you want to come in and make any responses, please do. Yeah?
I will respond. I mean, you're making it perfectly crystal clear for me, and I just want to say thank you. It's fantastic, and that it's right here, and that it's on the web. In the 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm always willing to accept affirmation, it's always good. Yes, thank you. And that means a lot, the kind of this really is communicating what matters. Okay. Anything else that you're feeling as you are responding to there? Do say, you've obviously come here, you've all got your own passions and what you're interested in, and it would be lovely if I felt that I could actually address some of those, during the time that we've got together. Yes, Ian?
Jack, there must have been some kind of wonderful journey that the teacher had taken the kids on for them to be able to reflect in that way. I mean, I don't think this is just... It's not saying you've rigged your data. I think it's fantastic to see the 6-year-olds engaging in a conversation, and the teacher must be doing some terrific things with those kids about talking and reflecting on learning.
You can imagine my joy, can't you, in working with the teachers who are doing this quality of work. Now, what I've devoted myself to is bringing the embodied knowledge of the teachers, that what she's been doing, into the university for accreditations in a way that doesn't distort the actual knowledge that she's expressing with the pupils. Now, if you want to access that in terms of the narratives, you can go into the Master Educators programs, and you can all of this is live, so you can actually do this. If you just browse down, and these are all accounts of our local teachers, and browse down to the Understanding, Learning and Learners section, and you just go into Joy Mounters, Can Children Carry Out Action Research About Learning, Creating Their Own Learning Theory? Now, that is where Joy has actually worked with her pupils. Here is an assignment, which again, just in terms of grading and judgment, was viewed very highly in terms of external examiners. But it's just that story that you're interested in is actually here in the accounts that Joy with her pupils has produced. And you'll see that the pupils' voices, I'll just go and just show you, just in terms of the pupils' models of the new learning theory, are incorporated within the text, as well as if you go down to the appendix, the children develop their own theory, which they call QUIF, which was about understanding, I am important, focus, question, feelings. And not only that, but as I say, you go down there and you've got what's the use of the task wheel, what you think of the task wheel, and it's also how would you improve it. So again, this is what I love this technology, because it just allows me to respond and to say how you can actually get into this material very quickly. Is there anything else that anybody's feeling? Was that yes?
Well, thank you for this presentation, and I'm thinking how many times as educator we forget to encourage creativity and to encourage this reflective thinking to creativity, and this happened mostly in high school in this very strict IB program, where kids are mostly used to have tables in front of them and to be expected to be creative. And this was in fact what I was looking for in case of my students, and I found how happy they are, how creative they are if you stimulate their creativity. And I think that this is what we can change in the world of educators, to encourage more creativity than only to get through a curriculum.
This feels to me to be so crucial. Now, if you go into that Master's Educators file, I'm going to Sally Cartwright's, that's here, the top one. It's quite a large file, but Sally is using that task wheel with the 17-year-olds in exactly that way, that Sally felt that by the time they'd gone through the secondary school, the creativity had begun to die. Now, she opened a space where the actual 17-year-olds are now engaging with the inquiry process, and her account, again, that's being judged very highly by the external examiners in a way that Sally's pleased because it hasn't distorted her knowledge, and it's brought the creativity of the students in. So I think the more we can learn to share these kinds of accounts, not just in our own locality, but globally, as I'm seeking to do tonight, the more we'll support that creativity. Now, is it okay to go? Yes, Jim?
I just wanted to add something to that, and I'm glad that you commented on it. One of the comments I hear most from the pre-K to 12 teachers I work with is that they don't see themselves or their work as creative. And it makes me sad that working teachers have somehow been institutionalized away from seeing themselves as creative. One of the teachers I work with, the third grade teacher, is presenting with me tomorrow, and we're looking at ways to enhance visions of creativity. So anything you can help us with.
Yeah, what I noticed, and if you just look at this phrase, if you would, because Cindy was right about my energy in 67, okay? It was really high. I hope you can still feel some of it. But I went to study educational theory at London University, at the Institute of Education with two of the country's top philosophers, Richard Peters and Paul Hurst. Now, I just want you to read something that was dominant when I started studying educational theory. Now, remember, I would come twice a week from my classroom in a very difficult area of London called the East End of London. And I would go with the philosophers. Now, just look at this phrase. And this relates to the explanations that I would be giving for my work with my students in my classroom. The philosophers believed that my explanation, now, look at this, were at best pragmatic maxims having a first crude and superficial justification in practice, that in any rationally developed theory would be replaced by principles with more fundamental theoretical justification. Now, Hurst recognised that mistake in 1983, but many of us have gone through the process, because I studied from 68 to 72. Now, imagine if you were faced with that problem, that your creativity is not only not being respected, but it is to be replaced by the principles from the academic theories in philosophy, psychology, sociology, and history. Now, it was as blatant as that. That was actually stated, I just want to focus that, would be replaced. Yeah? Now, that is why I do find it outrageous in the sense that there are educational theories, and if you read the vast majority of international journals, the refereed journals in education, I believe you will see the same process at work today. I went into the International Journal of Research and Methods in Education, special issue 2007. I give you a quote from that in the paper itself. And whilst I agree with some of the ideas in it, the actual form of the philosophers and the other social scientists that are talking is to replace the knowledge of us as the practicing educators with their theoretical perspectives. Now, that is what I think is getting in the way, and still is getting in the way, of bringing our embodied knowledge into the academy in the way that I've tried to develop at Bath, because we've now got 20, I think it's about 24 of the PhDs have gone through over the last 10 years, demonstrating that you can actually get your doctorates for this kind of work. And what I've done here, I just want to show you that you can access this. And this is the point that I was making, that I do agree with Carr's suggestion we need to develop self-knowledge as practitioners, forge our quality criteria for educational research from what constitutes excellence. Now, if you get into this special issue, and it's an international journal dealing with research and methods in education, and I say my point is that they're actually serving a reproductive function, and this idea of a mythological discourse, because they're sustaining forms of academic knowledge that are excluding the force of life-affirming energy I showed you, and the embodied expression of the value laid in educational knowledge of educators. So if you look at the video clips, then compare the representations in our academic journals, I'm saying you will find completely omitted the flows of energy and also the relational dynamic expression of our values. Now, this is something I'm urging us to do something about by getting our publications in the multimedia journals. And I'm just trying to show through this keynote of what you can actually do to get them published in those journals. But what I want to suggest now is that the second part of this address is about creating our own living educational theories and offering them freely to others. Now, I'm not sure how many of you would view the explanations that you give for your educational influence in your own learning. And I know it's not an easy notion, this. But I want to suggest that the explanations that you give for your educational influence in your own learning and the learning of your students is constituting a living educational theory. Previously, educational theory has always come from the academics, like in the psychology, philosophy, sociology, all in the traditional, what are called propositional form, all in the form of abstract generalities. Now, in my time at the London University, I could not find any individual theory or in any combination that could offer a valid explanation of my educational influence in my own learning or the learning of my students. And this is what made me go into the University of Bath in 1973 to see if I could actually find a way of constructing educational theories grounded in the explanations of practitioners, drawing on the theories from the traditional kind, but not allowing those traditional theories to literally replace my understandings and explanations with my pupils in terms of what I was influencing them with their learning. Now, could I just check that is okay with you, because it's got fundamental implications. It seems to me there are quite a few nods around the room. But I want to add something which has got a 2,500 year history of a battle between philosophers. I'm going to suggest, as well as being able to create your own explanations, you'll also recognise the truth that you exist as living contradictions in your classrooms with your students. As you ask questions of the kind, how do I make this better? How do I help to make this better? What might I do to improve what's going on? Now, I believe everybody here, and you can refute me when I say that you've all got values that you're passionate about and that you want to see lived as fully as possible. But every day you will be tense at some part of that day because your values are not being lived as fully as you can. And yeah? Yes, blowing the mic. Seems to be spot on here. Now, it's that feeling of holding together your quite passionately held values with the feeling that they're not being lived as fully as you can. So that's what I've been saying about a living contradiction. Your I is a living contradiction. Now, in traditional theory, you're not allowed to have that kind of contradiction. It goes back to Aristotle, 2,500 years ago, who set up a logic that eliminates contradictions from correct thought. And we're all, in the Western academy, dominated by that Aristotelian logic. Now, I'm saying, no, you can actually put forward your explanations of your educational influence, which include your own eyes as living contradictions as you seek to live your values as fully as you can. Now, that is, again, a really significant transformation in thinking that's needed. And I think that Donald Sherman would appreciate that move, because he advocated us in the text he produced in 1995, when he said, look, we need a new epistemology for the new scholarship of teaching. And he believed that this would come from action research. So I'm saying that we can actually generate, by combining our voices in our teacher research, a completely different form of educational knowledge, which keeps that flow of the values and the energy, doesn't allow them to be removed by the academy, and it's also relationally dynamic. Now, again, could I ask if you're okay with that? I'll just pause for a moment. But that is the second, if you like, advocacy of a point that I want to stress, that importance of your own living theories. Nobody else's, they're unique to you. Yeah?
I agree with you, but I have a problem in accepting the fact that I have my own ways of knowing, my own ways of my own philosophy and my own learning styles. It seems to be a bit overwhelming if I take into consideration everyone's philosophy in this room, everyone's different learning style. How do I reconcile that? How do I make sense of that?
Okay, now let me just try and see how this response is appropriate for your question. Now, Jean McNiff is in the room, and Jean and I have done a lot of work now together. But what Jean has done in Ireland is to supervise doctoral researchers, and 5 of them have gone through over the last 2 years, which is a pretty good record when you look at my own institution, which is a research active institution. For a member of staff to have 5 successfully completed doctorates is pretty good going. Now, if you look at these titles, now, My Living Theory of a Holistic Educational Practice of Marion Glenn, My Living Theory of Learning to Teach for Social Justice, How do I enable primary school children with specific learning disabilities and myself as their teacher to realise our learning potential? Towards a living theory of caring pedagogy. Look at Bernie Sullivan's. A living theory of a practice of social justice, realising the right of traveller children to educational equality. Now, traveller children in Ireland are groups of children who really do not, it's rather like the gypsies that were referred to in the UK, the Romani groups in Europe, the travellers, the people who actually don't tend to stay in one place, so the children don't tend to go to school on a regular basis. And Bernie was wanting to get them ensuring they got equality in terms of educational opportunity. Now, there are 5 there. Together, Jean and myself must have supervised over 30-odd doctorates. Jean on her own actually supervised 60-odd master's dissertations which have gone through the University of West of England. Now, it's not a matter of reading them all, but it's actually saying in this room you can quickly browse through the accounts like these here. If you go into the actionresearch.net and you go into the living theory theses, you've got here a list where you can access them all. And you can just go into, for example, any of them here, like Bernie's. You can get, oops, that's at Jean's. These are mine. Okay. Object not found. Now, you can get the abstracts and the contents of every one of those. And this one is a particularly passionate one because Marian Naidu was doing work with Alzheimer's patients and carers. Now, only some people in this room might be interested in that. But the fact that you can go to this and see the video clips of the Alzheimer's patient and her carer, who was her husband, and there's a very powerful, it's all done with ethical permissions, of the Alzheimer's patient and the carer working with Marion. And there's some beautiful moments where I believe that you would feel the passion for compassion that Marion has brought into the academy as a standard of judgment. So I agree with you, you wouldn't access everybody's doctorate here or masters, but quickly we could see what it was that interested in, and we'll get that tomorrow, I think, from the programme. We'll go along to things that interested us. Is that okay? Just as a, just showing you where you can access more of these accounts, if you fancy just having a look and browsing and then responding. Now, what I'm hoping you might do is, it's rather like we were talking about the website here, that if you go into my actionresearch.net site, I organise a national e-seminar for practitioner researchers for the British Education Research Association. Now, if you just click on this join or leave it, you'll get the form which you can actually just get in, you can sign it, it comes back to me. So you just put your email address and your name, submit it, it comes back to me. Now, you can then access the correspondence that's going on, and you can join in, so that this is one way of combining our voices. And you've got here that various threads, raising issue, asking questions, making network available for practitioner researchers. You can just go with that. This one particularly useful for us, I think, at the ICTR conference, raising issues, asking questions, making networking available for practitioners. Now, Jim and myself did a professional development workshop at ARA on Sunday, and quite a number of those have already joined in this e-seminar and are actually participating. So if anyone here feels that they would again like to engage in something of quite a widespread group who would respond to your concerns, just join that and, as I say, contribute. Is there anything else before I just go on? Because I've got a bit I just want to show you in terms of what I prepared for today. Is there anything else? Is it okay?
Go for it.
Right. Right, what I want to do then, that was the importance of the living educational theories. Now, what I want to suggest is that as well as the educational theories, constructing them individually. We're far more powerful if we learn how to combine our voices. But there's something, an original idea that I'd like to put forward to you that came out of a conference that I went to 2 weeks ago, where the title was Cultures in Resistance. And I just want to check whether this idea makes sense to you, that wherever we are, not only are ourselves feeling a living contradiction internally because our values are not being lived as fully as they can be, but we can also recognise that, for example, the accountability processes in the United States at the moment, I would imagine most of you are feeling them slightly oppressive. Is that an understatement? Now, the culture is having a dramatic influence on how people are feeling in schools. In the UK, we had, like you, a draconian, oppressive regime of testing, which is now being loosened. There's more emphasis now over the last 18 months on creativity than I've known for about 15 years. Now, that also provides another culture. Am I making sense here? That we've got a culture coming from the profession which is requiring more creativity in the classroom, the freedom to explore. And we've got, are you okay? We've also got the culture which is oppressive. Now, we live and we exist in those living boundaries. Can I just check that with you? Because this is really important, the idea that we're creating our own living theories. We can do it in terms of our own inquiry. How do I improve what I'm doing? But if we locate ourselves in those cultures in resistance, in the living boundaries of those cultures, we can actually start to have a much more influential effect and influence on social change. Because there is a danger that what we do can just become reproductive. That we can just do something, we believe we're changing something, but actually the power relations remain as they are. The hierarchical, yes?
I was going to ask earlier when we looked at, and it was Joe, who was the person talking to the students? Joy. And working in an American context, in an urban environment that's under incredible pressure, I was wondering how does her work contribute not only to the larger context here, but how does that work actually interact or construct the context of her school? And how does it go beyond her classroom to influence her school and vice versa? Is she also feeling oppressed by the larger context?
Now, I work with, if you like, again, it's in this point about the energy. It's like here, the passion that people have for what they're doing. They manage to sustain it, and part of the way is by coming to groups on Tuesdays and Thursdays with me at the university, and they have work in the schools as well. And what Joy did was she actually, this was last year, she got her group of 6-year-olds, and you can just imagine the comment that are outraged about her not involving them, right? Now, it got to the point where these 6-year-olds decided that they should influence school policy on how learning was organised. And so they asked Joy to see if she could organise a staff meeting in the school that they would go to, and they would actually talk through what they felt about learning and assessment. Okay, now, that was actually organised. The children actually were superb in relation to what Joy was reporting back on. Now, there was some resistance from some of the staff because they themselves were not that open with their pupils. Now, actually, things go backwards and forwards, to and fro. If I tell you that in one of the UK schools, this action research got underway in the early 90s. Somebody came over from Ontario, and Jackie DeLong is in the audience here, and this woman called Linda Grant went back to Ontario. She explored this with Jackie, who liked very much what was going on, and actually Jackie took up the ideas in Ontario and developed them creatively, whereas at the school itself, because the leader of this process went on a 2-year sabbatical, actually fell back. So the processes go backwards and forwards. Now, at that school with those children, that process will now fall back. But Joy has just become a head. So she is now working with a whole staff to actually work on these ideas. So, in answer to your question, it is quite a difficult process, to keep in one sight the sustained inquiries. But when you look at how the ideas are travelling, I think there's a lot of hope in it. Okay, now can I just show you this, that in answer to where it influences others, if you go into this one by Amy Scoops, that is where, and Ros Herford, you will see part of Joy's influence being expressed by both Amy and Ros as they're developing their inquiries, grounded in the tensions that I've just been talking about. So both of them were feeling, especially Amy, about the tensions around assessment of what we call our standard assessment tasks, and tests. They were really stifling her creativity, and she was feeling very oppressed. But she worked at it, she inquired into it, got some creativity going with her pupils, so she felt okay. And it was her action research and her teacher research that enabled her to do that. Now, I just want to just move through this point. Just look at this look at this title. How do I sustain a loving, receptively responsive educational relationship with my pupils, which will motivate them in their learning and encourage me in my teaching? Now, these are the first times that this kind of question can be asked and answered and legitimated in the Academy for the master's degrees. So you can access those, as I say, you just click on that, and that will actually come up with Claire's account. The question of spread. Now you'll see that I've put some references to how some of Jean's work in South Africa has been leading to the generation of their own living theories. And I've put the recent paper that's just been published about the living theories being developed in South Africa. In China with Moira Laidlaw, that you saw the clip of. Again, these are the references. Jackie DeLong, also with Cheryl Black and Ron Whiteman. And this particular one in Japan has just gone through, this guy, G. Adler Collins, graduates in June with his doctorate for developing a curriculum of the healing nurse in a Japanese university. And he's taking that teacher research to a new level in terms of a different culture and showing how he's managed to bring a totally different curriculum into that context. Now, finally, I just want to ask about this, that if we are going to develop these ideas of living theories, and we're going to place ourselves in these living boundaries of cultures in resistance, do we need to focus on something that I believe everybody here understands that they live by? But when you try to bring this into the Academy, as I say, it is eliminated. Now, I believe that everybody here, and you can question me on that, when you saw the video clips of that, what I call relationally dynamic, it's a receptive, responsive process, but it's moving continuously. And those teachers, and you saw them just continuously responding to the context they're in and the boundaries. Now, this idea that a friend and colleague of mine called Alan Rayner refers to it as inclusionality. And he says this: at the heart of inclusionality is a simple shift in the way we frame reality from absolutely fixed to relationally dynamic. Now, I just would like you to focus on that. He goes on to say other things, but I'm saying that as part of your natural life, you will recognize the truth of that sense of all relating in that way. But when we come into the Academy, everything is framed into absolutely fixed. It's like a Euclidean space. It's like put into the boxes. It's like categories that are fixed. And yet, if we just go with the natural flow of what we know we experience in our classes with our students, I think we could actually start to develop these very different accounts, which the Academy are increasingly legitimating. Now, I'll just move to this point, that I'd like to try something with you that I've never done before. And it's this point that I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. But I believe that it's essential to bring in what we call this kind of narrative wreckage. Do you know this idea that the stories of your lives, as you tell each other, you'll first tell each other smooth stories of self. Yeah, you tell a smooth story. As you get to know someone and trust them, you'll start to actually reveal some of the greater difficulties that one's had, some of the painful things. It's difficult to acknowledge the embarrassment, the pain, sometimes the rage, but all of those kind of qualities. Now, I just quickly want to run through these. As I say, I'd be really interested to see if you feel that I've overcome the kind of rage that I felt when I experienced these judgments in my own practice. and that you feel, as I'm with you, that I'm still channeling the energy that I feel for education in the here and now. So I'm hoping you feel a loving energy for what I do, even though what I'm going to show you at the time provoked enormous outrage. Now, the importance of this is this. If you look at what happened in the UK, it was really horrendous, not in comparison with Ground Zero, but this is the suffering of an individual. On the July 7th, 2005, Jill Hicks was on the London Underground pulling out of King's Cross Station when Abdullah Shahid Jamal detonated the bomb that injured Jill. And she lost her legs, and this is what Jill wrote in a recent book. I didn't matter. I wish he'd made the effort to know me before he detonated his bomb. I wish I could have looked at him in the eyes and had the opportunity to say, I am not your enemy. I wish you no harm. I am not the enemy. I am a person, a human being, just like you, just like you. Now, the violation that Jill experienced was horrific. But her point, and I do agree with this, is that I feel that if the bomber had, as you saw with Cheryl and you saw with Moira, made that connection before doing that, found that recognition of value in the other, it would have been extremely difficult to go ahead and damage that human being. Now, that is why I've been trying to stress the importance of these relationships and the energy, the life-affirming energy that Jill shows in her text. I do urge you to read it. I've referenced it in the book. And it's a really beautiful book in which an individual is showing how she has overcome one of the deepest violations that one could experience and not allowing that to destroy her life. She's actually explaining how her creative energy and her love of life are actually emerging in the light of her response to what happened to her. And education, I think we've got a lot of lessons, to learn from Jill. Now, here's just something that I want you to just think about, if you will, because I think you've all got these kinds of problems. Not perhaps as severe as this, but can you imagine, I've always been very interested, not just in improving my classroom, but also, the social context in which I work. I've been fascinated, can I help to improve the quality of life in the School of Education where I work? Can I even, more so than that? It's quite ambitious. Can I really influence the quality of life in the university? Can I contribute to that quality of life? Now, here are some of the judgments that have been made on my contributions. This was 76. You've not given satisfaction in the teaching of prescribed courses. Absence of evidence to suggest you pursued research of sufficient quality. And this is the one that you've exhibited forms of behaviour which have harmed the good order and morale of the School of Education. Do you like that one? That, yes, in writing from Senate to me, saying that I wouldn't be getting a tenured contract. Now, as you see, in 2008, I'm still there. So you can imagine some people external to the university acted in a way that protected my contract. Yeah, that is a very serious. You can see that if the university carries that out, I would have lost the job. Now, I really wanted to extend my influence for good in the university, and this is what was actually said. This was about 1987. It goes up to the present day. So I'm clearly getting more influential because it's not just the School of Education, right? It's that my activities and writings are a challenge to the present organisation of the university. So I've actually upped the ante here, clearly. This is evidence that, yes, it's not quite the influence I wish to have, but it's acknowledged. I've definitely been having an influence. Now, just in terms of the power of the university and the academic judgments 20-odd years ago. Now, I put 2 doctoral submissions in 1882 that were different because I was refused permission to submit and resubmit the first one, which is very unusual in university life. But this is the phrase that got me. Once the examiners have been appointed, their competence cannot in any circumstances be questioned. Now, under human rights legislation, the university had to change that in 1991 to allow criticism to be made on the grounds of bias, prejudice, inadequate assessment. But I just want to show you, that these are real power relations that have been part of my own life as an academic, And I won't have time to show you the video clip that I've put. I'll just show it's there. But what happened was that letter saying that my activities and writings had challenged the present and proper order of the university went to a board of studies who said, look, this is prima facie evidence of a breach of Jack's academic freedom. Senate set up a working party to look into it. And I was invited to address the working party as they gave me their conclusion, which was that my academic freedom hadn't been breached. Right? So that was their conclusion. Now, they were right, because it hadn't been breached. But when I went in front of that working party, and I do hope at some point you'll just glance at this, it's only a couple of minutes, that clip there. But it's where I address that working party with all, you'll feel it, I think, the energy and the passion of how they would be denying their responsibilities as academics if they had not recognised the pressure to which I'd been subjected. Now, to do them justice, the report that went to Senate did say that my academic, there it says, the working party did not find my academic freedom to be breached. This was because of my persistence in the face of pressure. I love that phrase, I still use it. A less determined individual might well have been discouraged and therefore constrained. Now, I imagine you've all felt yourselves at times this energy-sapping lack of recognition, within your workplaces, and you've all had to draw on those reserves of courage and passion to keep seeing you through. And it's that kind of resilience which I think we should be bringing into, our accounts of what we do. Now, I'll just draw this now to a close because I don't want to go on longer than necessary. But what I want, I just mentioned this last point because this is the one that I'm still, it's taken me 2 years to work out a reasonable response to this. Right. Now, most of you who know my work will know that I've been criticising the refereed journals and international refereed journals for the points that I've given you. That you can't communicate what I've been talking about using words on pages of text. So, I put in for a readership, and that's not even a professorship, that's just a readership in a UK university 2 years ago, on the urging of my colleagues. Because after I got tenure in '76, so many people had passionately fought for me. I didn't want to break the tenured contract, so I'd never gone for promotion because you have to break the tenured contract. But 2 years ago, I was persuaded that the university's recognition of living educational theory would actually serve the interests of spreading the ideas further. So I put in for a readership. And the committee decided that for me to get a readership, I had to develop, right, look at this, I had to focus on producing articles which can be disseminated via established and renowned international refereed journals. Right? Now, I'm saying that that is my reality. I'm hoping that you feel that I'm actually channeling my energy in a creative way as we're here. And that you don't feel that kind of rage that when I got that, you can imagine, can't you, what it does. And I imagine over here it's gone through that kind of, you could kill people, basically. But I think my colleagues have felt that at some points, But you've got to channel it, I think. So when you're into a classroom next day, the students are actually feeling your love and your passion for what you're doing in education. And that's why I just want to finish with just coming back to those images, and I think it is that image there of the kids, or as they're there and they're just talking, and I can move just along, and you feel there is something there. When I look at those statements made about me and that, and then you look here at what really matters. It does feel to me that if we can combine our voices, through generating our own living theories, but acknowledging that we're in those living boundaries of cultures in resistance, that we will increase the kind of influence that we have and serve the interest of those pupils. So I'll stop there, but thank you very much indeed for having me back.
I will help orchestrate the questions. Do people have questions, comments? I think You'd be open to
Oh yeah.
relevant stories, whatever. Looks like way up in the back.
I wonder if so many of our academics have been out of the classroom for more than 20 years. Some of them have never been in the classroom in teacher education, at least in the United States. I wonder if there were a more integral process where our academics spent more time in schools and classrooms, we would have a more sensible educational process here.
Yes, we had a process in the UK where lecturers who were working with the students on their method programs had to have what was called recent and relevant experience. So I think, to do justice to my colleagues who do what is known as the methods or the subject didactic work, they do have a lot of contact with the schools. The problem is that we're now getting a divide between the academics who are known as research active and contribute to our what is called research assessment exercise, where our university gets a tremendous amount of money because of the publishing in those international referee journals. And so I'm completely agreeing with you that bringing the pupils and what the teachers are doing, if you like, into the university in a close partnership is absolutely essential. I've been going out into schools teaching the 6-year-olds and the 17-year-olds this kind of inquiry process and working with the teachers to develop the pupils as researchers, as we're seeing there. And it feels to me that is crucial. Yeah. I wasn't quite sure about timing. Could I just ask you, how long have we got for questions? Are we okay?
Fine.
Yeah, sure. Anything else? Yes?
I'm interested in responding to the lady up there who talked about her learning styles and the feeling of how can I join together, combining our voices when my learning style may be different than the others. And hearing from you again in terms of your thinking about your question. The lady that was sitting up here about learning styles, there you are. What are you thinking now about your question and combining voices and your own unique learning style? Do you still have some puzzlement over that?
I do, in all honesty. I think it's going to take a while for me to absorb what I've heard in this lecture, but also to learn from other teachers and to experience to actually go into the classroom and experience their different learning styles and see how I could incorporate those and how can I actually make them my own, in a sense of bridging different learning styles together.
Bridget, do you feel that there is a sense that you need to incorporate or make them part of you? Or is it that by looking at other people's learning styles and how they have come to understand themselves, you can better understand yourself? See, I'm not sure that when we're talking about combining voices that we need to necessarily take from other people and make it part of us. But I think by combining voices and listening to others and seeing how they interpret their own context and living within their own boundaries, they can better understand themselves.
And I guess it's having that opportunity to actually hear other people's voices and not, I agree with you, not actually saying, yes, I'm going to take all these different learning styles and make my own.
Right.
I just want to make sure that they're out there, available, and that I can pick and choose, or that I can mold my own ways, my own learning styles by being reflective and by observing what other people or other teachers actually do in their classrooms.
There are quite a lot, do you?
I'm just really intrigued by the potential, I guess, of these video clips and this form of presentation of ideas in contrast to those referee journals. And it makes me think also about the culture in which we live now, where there's been some research that children's brains are different because they're so video oriented. And I mean, I'm not expressing this really well, but it seems that it's very revolutionary to think about another way of seeing, because and knowing and understanding what's happening. it's just very exciting. So I don't know. I just think about that in terms of where are the referee journals going and who's their audience.
Well,
This is open to everyone.
Yeah.
Whereas those referee journals don't get read very much.
They don't, but I also think if you could just get into, for example, action research expeditions. I've just brought it up on the web, and you'll find there a referee journal that is publishing multimedia accounts, exactly of the kind that we're now talking about. Ontario Action Research also does this. So I do think it's just somehow over the tomorrow as well, just talking together to see, right, where are these openings and opportunities, and that is one hosted by Montana University. Michael Brody is the editor of it. It's a really superb one, just to get into and have a look. Yeah. Is that?
Yeah, I'm going to work, so I'm going to thank you. What other people who had their hands up or who had thoughts in their mind, just hold on to it all. And because we'd like to invite you all to enjoy the reception and continue the conversation. But at this point, can we thank Jack for this?